My name is Kamra Devi Dasi, and this is number 11 in my autobiographical video series, and for now that will complete it. Occasionally, I look at Gab's social to see if there's anything relevant to my preaching efforts. And there was a short post that the founder of Gab put up recently. His name is Andrew Torba, and Gab is Christian-based social media. Somebody had asked Andrew a question, and it was a very brief reply that he gave. He said, "The same people who stole the election and created the experimental gene therapy hate Jesus Christ and Christians more than anything else in this world." In that regard, I'm choosing to record a short essay that I wrote some time back called "The Meaning of the Cross." And this essay is available on my professional website, workofanangel.com, but I'm going to record this here because it's so relevant to everything we've been discussing. So, the meaning of the cross. This dark corner of the creation, known as the material world, is not our real home. It is the temporary abode of those eternal souls who have shown some envy to the Lord and his associates in the vast realm of the spiritual kingdom, and whose diseased mentality would create disharmony in the pure, loving exchanges of the spiritual world. These souls require to learn some lessons regarding their constitutional position in this reform school situation of the material universes, and to thus again experience real joy in the reawakening of their relationship with Krishna, the reservoir of all pleasure. The lessons here are learned through experiencing many births in various species, giving the soul the opportunity to try to find pleasure in almost unlimited extrapolations of potential sense pleasure. However, those attempts to enjoy always result in frustration, as the soul remains separated from God and its pure relationship with God by various layers of gross and subtle impurity. There are also those compassionate souls who enter these dark regions of material existence by their own will, saddened to see the severe sufferings of this world, or by the beckoning of the Lord, in order to enlighten these misguided souls as to what will make them really happy. Happiness is not found in pursuit of the longings of the mundane mind, or in trying to satisfy the cravings of the material senses. Real joy lies in the reawakening of the soul to its proper relationship to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is our best friend, the supreme enjoyer, and the owner and controller of all that be. However, the example and teachings of these well-intended and gentle souls is not always well received by the inmates of the material realm, who are hell-bent to try to enjoy in more and more perverse ways, driven by the insanity of insatiable sense desire, and who will see the endeavors to invite them and others to reform as a threat to their hedonistic goals. It's a joyful business to preach the glories of the Lord, and also a dangerous one, as there will always be those who are causelessly envious of the Lord and his devotees. There may be physical attacks or even psychic attacks upon these bona fide preachers, as can be seen by many examples throughout devotional history, the most famous of which was Jesus Christ, who was crucified by the most despicable of envious factors. This material world is a dangerous place. The veil of material covering over the soul in material existence is thick and seductive. By God's grace and the efforts of the pure preacher, that covering may be pierced. The pure preacher takes the risk of speaking strongly in order to cut through the layers of illusion for the sake of liberating those who are starving to hear transcendental truths, knowing that the reward may be crucifixion, literally or figuratively. The cross is that risk that the preacher takes, entering into the cesspool of this material world for the sake of the innocent. It is the symbol of how the envious persons see the intrusion of purity into their world of illusory sense pleasure, and what their malefic intent is for the one who brings the message of love of Godhead into what they perceive as their personal domain. For one who teaches the science of love of Godhead to those who are ready to hear, that person is very dear to the Lord. In spite of the efforts of the demonic class of men, the devotee sees those risks as only a very minor inconvenience on the path of ultimate victory, the pleasure of the predecessor bona fide spiritual teachers and the Supreme Lord himself, Sri Krishna. So this ends the essay. The so-called leaders of the organization of ISKCON partnered with the worst of the worst, the same people behind so many atrocities in this world. Shoulder to shoulder, big names, famous names, associated with the biggest crimes going, especially pedophilia and the kidnapping and transporting of disposable people for the worst of horrible crimes against humanity. Their main agenda is simply the acquisition of power apart from Krishna. Their main means of achieving it are the most horrible of satanic crimes against family values, children, and the very upholding of religious principles. They hate anything good and godly, and along with Jesus, as Torba mentioned, they hate Srila Prabhupada and what he came to give. Real religion is the greatest threat to their agenda. Those who try to uphold it, they see as their enemies. That is the summary. It was a complete takeover of the organization, and all that is left is a shadow of the real thing at best, and a total perversion and misrepresentation of it at worst. Covert operation, very well hidden, expertly contrived by the demons. I cannot argue my own experiences, what I saw and heard, and the threats I got from both those disguised in Vaishnav dress and those who appeared as well-to-do and famous people of the world. I've told you that I was beaten and tortured, and worse, by demons of the world in tandem with the demons within the organization. I was told personally by one very known pedophile of the secular world, stop trying to interfere in our plans. In other words, he didn't like that I was, he had it in place. He just wanted to keep the pedophilia covered up, the disposable people covered up. So he was in my face, shaking his finger in my face, saying, stop trying to interfere with our plans. I was slapped across the face by one female politician, again, very famous, and called a bitch by her when I confronted her about her implication. I heard the infiltrators in devotee garb say about me, this one's in our way. She's a troublemaker. However, one who Krishna once saved, no one can kill, and one who Krishna once killed, no one can save. Rakhe Krishna, More Krishna, Rakhe. They were constantly trying to claim what Srila Prabhupada created for their own evil agenda. All his work they tried to take as a foundation for their own evil empire. A pact between the organizational elites and the more secular worldly players of the worst agenda possible to destroy the organization from within, to negate Srila Prabhupada, destroy the Peripheral system, mutilate what Srila Prabhupada gave, manipulate the followers for their own purposes, make the real science of the practice of Krishna consciousness unavailable, destroy the real spirit of devotion. Have a GBC meeting and ban chocolate and ignore the rampant pedophilia and attack those who noticed. Make it mainstream and acceptable, thus irrelevant. Christianity is mainstream, but the teachings of Jesus Christ are obscured. Many Christians know that. But many devotees think that making ISKCON mainstream and socially acceptable is a success. It's a failure if what Srila Prabhupada came to give has been obscured, and it has been. The life, the vitality, the vibrancy, it's been cloaked. That they attacked so brutally is testimony on its own to Srila Prabhupada's greatness and the importance of his mission. There are many sincere devotees in the organization. There are many good hearts. They're not being given the entirety of what Srila Prabhupada gave, just enough for them to be useful to the system. It was a massive sellout of the devotees. Their spirit was stolen. Their individual preaching empowerment robbed, and it must be recovered. Those who are preaching, those of you who are senior devotees, disciples of Srila Prabhupada, to whom are you delivering your students? To whom are you referring out when they're ready for initiation? Srila Prabhupada came to the United States at almost 70 years of age and accomplished so much in his last years. For those of us still present, we still have much to offer. It's not too late. Where do we go from here? It's far from hopeless. The reset button is being pushed, and there is a coming resurrection of the real thing. It's ordained. The events of the world today are meant for the mission of Srila Prabhupada to come to center stage. That's the real importance of the current state of affairs. It's not just about saving the United States. It goes a big step further than that. The United States was founded as a stage for the propagation of godliness by those who served God as best they knew. The stage was being set specifically for the eventual presentation of Krishna consciousness to the entire world by the efforts and inspiration of our Srila Prabhupada under the direction of his spiritual master, Srila Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Thakur. As the founding fathers of the U.S. saw the need for the real power to be locally based, Srila Prabhupada also saw the necessity for Krishna consciousness to be practiced at the local level in order to spread all over the planet. He was not able to personally institute that aspect of the preaching, although he gave the instruction, but it must develop now, even if just out of necessity. The 10,000 years of the golden age of Mahaprabhu is just beginning. How can the sincere devotees regain their spiritual shininess and pull together for the glorification of Srila Prabhupada and the sharing of his gifts to humanity? How can the children be raised in purity? There are great souls among us who've chosen to come and participate in the real thing. It's time for the empowerment of the individual, the families, and the localized Krishna conscious communities. Srila Prabhupada desired this. Again, I repeat that one of the main directions that Srila Prabhupada gave to me was to separate his name from what's gone on in his name that does not properly represent his mood, his mission, and his teachings. If his name is released from affiliation with the questionable deeds of his false followers, people will be enthusiastic to study and apply those teachings. Please read and study Srila Prabhupada's books with great relish and cherish them as the greatest gift you were ever given, because in actuality they are. The proper study of these books by one who is not envious will free the individual soul from this material world characterized by the sufferings of birth, death, disease, and old age. It will invite entry into the eternal spiritual kingdom, characterized by the greatest joy of association with the Godhead, the divine couple Sri Sri Radha and Krishna, and their pure devotees.